Have you ever lost someone in the forest? Imagine going camping with your brother, and he disappears in the middle of the night. No sound, no struggle, just gone. You search for hours, screaming his name, but all you hear is the forest whispering back. Days later he returns, but something is wrong. His smile is too wide. His voice sounds different. And his eyes, they're not his anymore. This is the story of how the forest took my brother and gave me back something else. The first night in Ravenwood Forest felt calm, almost too calm. Ethan Carter zipped up the tent while his younger brother, Noah, sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows. The forest around them was silent, except for the crackle of flames and the distant hoot of an owl. "Ethan, do you hear that?" Noah asked, tilting his head. Ethan paused. At first he thought it was just the wind. But no, it sounded like whispers. Faint, scattered voices drifting through the trees. Words he couldn't understand, like a language from another time. "Probably just the wind," Ethan said, forcing a smile. But his voice shook slightly. They finished eating, and Noah crawled into his sleeping bag while Ethan sat by the fire, scrolling through his phone. Midnight passed. The air grew colder, heavier, like the forest was breathing. Eventually, Ethan dozed off. When he woke, the fire was dead. The forest was pitch black. He glanced at the tent, and his heart dropped. Noah's sleeping bag was empty. "Noah," Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. He unzipped the tent and stepped outside. His flashlight beam sliced through the fog, but Noah was nowhere. Then he saw it. Footprints in the mud, small and barefoot, leading away from the campsite. Ethan followed them, calling out, "Noah, this isn't funny." The deeper he went, the darker it became. The footprints went on for several yards, then stopped. Completely. Like Noah had vanished into thin air. That's when Ethan heard it. A sound behind him. A laugh. Not Noah's laugh. Something low, broken and wrong. Ethan spun around, flashlight shaking in his hand. Nothing was there. Just endless trees stretching into the night. And then the whispers returned, louder this time, and they were saying his name. Ethan's heart pounded as he stood frozen in the darkness. The forest felt alive, breathing, watching. He gripped the flashlight tighter and whispered Noah's name again, his voice trembling. "Noah, where are you?" No answer. Only the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of something unnatural. He followed the footprints deeper into the woods. They were barefoot, small, and pressed hard into the soft mud, like Noah had been running. Ethan moved quickly, his boots sinking into the ground, his breath turning white in the cold air. "Please, Noah, just answer me." The trail led him between two twisted oak trees, their branches curling like claws. Then he saw it, Noah's jacket, torn, hanging from a branch like someone had placed it there on purpose. The sleeves dangled like arms. Ethan's stomach churned. He snatched the jacket and held it close. It was damp. It smelled of wet soil, and something else. Something metallic. He swung the flashlight to the ground. The footprints continued for a few feet, then stopped. No drag marks, no signs of a struggle, just gone. Like the earth had swallowed him whole. Ethan felt the weight of silence pressing against his ears. His breathing grew louder, harsher. Then snap. A branch broke somewhere behind him. He spun around, the light darting through the trees. Nothing. Just endless darkness. His pulse hammered in his skull. Then he saw it. Movement. Far ahead, between the trees, something tall and thin, gliding silently. It wasn't Noah. It couldn't be. Its arms were too long. its head tilted unnaturally to the side. Ethan's throat closed. He couldn't move. He just stared as the thing slowly disappeared behind the trees, leaving only the sound of whispers. And those whispers were louder now, clearer. They were calling his name. By dawn, Ethan stumbled out of the woods, his clothes soaked with dew and his hands trembling. He didn't find Noah. He didn't even sleep. The whispers had followed him the whole night, fading only when the sun came up. He drove down the lonely dirt road until he saw a small wooden cabin near the edge of the forest. Smoke curled from its chimney. Desperate, he knocked on the door. The door creaked open, and an old woman peered out. Her gray hair was messy, her face wrinkled deep like cracked bark. Her pale blue eyes studied him without blinking. "Please," Ethan said, breathless. "My brother, he's missing. The forest took him." The woman's expression didn't change. She opened the door wider. "Come in," she said in a voice like dry leaves. Inside, the cabin smelled of herbs and old wood. Strange charms hung from the ceiling, bones, feathers, and small carved figures. The woman poured tea without asking and set it on the table. "You've been in Ravenwood too long," she whispered, sitting across from him. "That forest doesn't lose people, boy. It takes them." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean? Who are you?" "Margaret Doyle," she said. "People here call me Maggie. I've lived by this forest my whole life. I know what it does." Ethan gripped the table. "You're telling me a story. I need the truth." She leaned forward, her eyes sharp as glass. "The truth is, if your brother vanished overnight, he's gone. And if he comes back," she paused, her lips trembling slightly, "it won't be him anymore." Ethan's skin crawled. "What do you mean?" Her gaze drifted to the window. The trees loomed outside, swaying slowly though there was no wind. "The forest changes what it keeps," she whispered, "and it always gives something back." Just then, a soft knock echoed at the door. 3 slow taps. Ethan froze. The sun hadn't even set yet. The knocking didn't stop. 3 slow, heavy taps, then silence. Ethan's heart thudded against his ribs as he stared at the door. Maggie's face turned pale. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table like claws. "Don't open it," she hissed. But Ethan was already moving. He flung the door wide and froze. Noah stood there, barefoot, clothes torn and filthy, his skin pale as moonlight, lips cracked and dry. His hair was wet, dripping onto the wooden floor like he had crawled out of a river. Ethan's throat tightened. "Noah?" His brother smiled. Slowly, too slowly. "You left me," Noah whispered. His voice didn't sound right. It was his, but layered like 2 voices speaking at once. Ethan's stomach twisted. He pulled Noah inside, ignoring Maggie's sharp breath behind him. Noah was ice cold to the touch. His fingernails were black at the tips, his eyes darker than before, too black in the center, swallowing the light. "Where were you?" Ethan asked, kneeling to look at him. Noah tilted his head in a jerky motion, like a broken puppet. "In the forest," he said. "The trees showed me things. They said you'd come." Maggie stood in the corner, clutching a necklace of bones. "That's not your brother anymore," she whispered under her breath. Ethan ignored her. He wrapped a blanket around Noah and guided him to the couch. Noah sat stiffly, staring out the window at the tree line. His lips curled into that same too wide smile. "Are you hungry?" Ethan asked softly. Noah didn't answer. He just whispered something under his breath, a string of words Ethan couldn't understand. They sounded like a chant, low and ancient. Maggie stepped closer, her voice shaking. "Ethan, if you love your brother, leave now." Noah turned his head slowly toward her. His blackened nails tapped against the wooden armrest. And then for the first time, he smiled at Maggie. But his teeth weren't the same anymore. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept checking on Noah, who sat by the window motionless, staring out at the forest. The blanket slipped from his shoulders, but he didn't seem to feel the cold. "Noah, come lie down," Ethan said gently. Noah turned his head slowly. His eyes gleamed faintly in the dark, like an animal's. "I can't," he whispered. "They don't like it when I'm away for too long." Ethan froze. Who doesn't like it? Noah tilted his head in that unnatural way again, bones cracking softly. "The ones in the trees." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound caught in his throat. "You're just tired, Noah. You've been through a lot." He made Noah lie on the couch and sat in a chair nearby, watching him. Hours passed. The cabin was silent except for the sound of rain tapping on the roof. Then Ethan woke with a start. The clock read 3:15 a.m. The fire was almost out. He looked over at the couch. Empty. Noah. His voice was shaky now. He grabbed the flashlight and searched the cabin. He found him in the corner of the room, facing the wall. His body was stiff, his arms hanging limply. His head twitched slightly left and right, like he was listening to something. Ethan's breath caught when he heard it, whispering. Low, fast, like a prayer in a language that didn't exist. And it was coming from Noah's mouth. "Noah," Ethan whispered, stepping closer. Noah stopped. Slowly he turned his head, that wide smile stretching across his pale face. His lips were stained black, like he'd been chewing on dirt. "You shouldn't wake me," he said softly. His voice was layered again, two voices, maybe three, speaking at once. Ethan stumbled back, heart racing. Maggie's warning rang in his head. If he comes back, it won't be him anymore. And for the first time, Ethan believed her. By morning, Ethan decided they needed to leave the cabin. Whatever was happening, he couldn't stay here any longer. He packed their things quickly, glancing at Noah, who sat on the couch with that same empty stare. "Noah, we're going home," Ethan said firmly. Noah didn't respond. He just smiled faintly and walked to the car without a word. His movements were stiff, unnatural, like he was learning how to use his own body again. The dirt road was quiet as Ethan drove through the endless trees. Rain streaked across the windshield, and the forest outside looked darker than it should in daylight. Noah sat in the passenger seat, head turned toward the woods, whispering softly to himself. Ethan gripped the steering wheel. "What are you saying?" he asked. Noah smiled without looking at him. "They're calling." Before Ethan could answer, something stepped onto the road. A deer, thin and trembling, stood frozen in the headlights. Ethan hit the brakes hard. The car skidded to a stop. "Noah, stay in the car," Ethan said, fumbling for his breath. But Noah didn't listen. Before Ethan could grab him, Noah flung the door open and ran into the rain. His bare feet slapped against the wet road as he charged toward the deer. "No. Stop," Ethan shouted, jumping out after him. What happened next made Ethan's stomach turn. Noah lunged at the deer, knocking it to the ground. The animal thrashed, crying out, but Noah was faster. Too fast. He grabbed its neck with both hands and twisted. A sharp crack echoed through the forest. The deer went limp. Noah crouched over it, breathing hard. Then he bent down and bit into its throat. Blood spilled across his face, dripping down his chin. Ethan froze in horror as Noah turned to look at him, his teeth stained red. His smile was wide, unnatural. "You should eat too," Noah said softly, voice layered and wrong. Ethan stumbled back toward the car, his mind screaming only one thing. "This isn't my brother anymore." Ethan drove back to the cabin as fast as he could, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Noah sat in the back seat now, silent, his head leaning against the window. Raindrops slid down the glass, and with each passing tree, Ethan swore he heard faint whispers coming from outside. When they reached the cabin, Noah stepped out slowly, bare feet sinking into the mud. He didn't wait for Ethan. He walked inside like he owned the place. Ethan locked the door behind them, then dragged a heavy chair against it. His heart wouldn't stop pounding. He turned to Noah. "What happened out there?" His voice cracked. "What did you do?" Noah stood in the middle of the room, his shirt soaked in blood, and smiled that too wide smile. "They wanted to see if I was ready," he whispered. Ethan demanded, his voice shaking. Noah's blackened nails tapped against the wooden table in a slow rhythm. "The forest," he said softly. "It doesn't like to wait." Ethan backed away. He needed answers, real answers. He grabbed his keys and ran to Maggie's cabin. When she opened the door and saw the blood on his shirt, her face went pale. "You didn't listen," she said in a trembling voice. "He's killing animals, Maggie," Ethan hissed. "He's whispering in some language. What's happening to him?" Maggie stepped back, her eyes full of fear. "The forest marked him," she said. "He stayed too long, and now it owns him. If you don't stop it, Ethan, you'll be next." Ethan's chest tightened. "What do I do?" Her answer came in a whisper. "You kill what came back. Because that's not your brother anymore." Before Ethan could respond, a sharp crash rang out from his cabin. Glass shattered. Then Noah's voice screaming his name. But it didn't sound human. Ethan bolted out the door, rain stinging his face as he ran back toward the cabin. His stomach churned when he saw the door broken wide open, splintered from the inside. Noah was gone. And from the forest came the whispers again. Louder. Closer. Calling Ethan's name. Ethan ran into the forest, rain soaking his clothes, his breath tearing through his throat. The whispers were everywhere now, wrapping around the trees, curling through the air like smoke. They didn't sound like voices anymore. They sounded like roots dragging through the earth. "Noah!" he shouted, flashing his light between the trees. But the forest swallowed his voice. Then he saw it, a faint glow deep in the woods. Not fire. Something else. Something alive. Ethan moved closer, his boots sinking in the mud. When he reached the clearing, his breath froze in his chest. Noah was there, standing in the center of a circle carved into the ground. Strange symbols etched deep into the soil. The trees around him twisted inward, their roots writhing above the earth like black serpents. And Noah didn't look like Noah anymore. His skin was pale, stretched too tight over his bones. Black veins snaked across his arms. His limbs seemed longer, wrong. His head tilted at an impossible angle as he turned toward Ethan with a slow, jerky motion. "You came," Noah said. But his voice was no longer layered. It was a chorus now. Dozens of whispers spilling from his throat in perfect unison. Ethan's stomach lurched. "Noah, what's happening to you?" Noah smiled, his teeth glinting sharp in the moonlight. "They showed me the truth," he whispered. "They want you too." The ground trembled. Roots burst from the soil and slithered toward Ethan's feet, coiling like snakes. He stumbled back, heart pounding, as the whispers grew louder, chanting his name over and over. "Noah, stop this!" Ethan shouted, voice breaking. But Noah only stretched his arms wide, his body trembling as if something inside him was trying to break free. "The forest loves us, brother," he said softly. "It doesn't want us to leave." The roots surged forward, wrapping around Ethan's ankles, pulling him toward the circle. The earth felt warm, breathing, alive. And all around him, the trees leaned closer like they were watching, waiting. The roots tightened around Ethan's legs, pulling him toward the circle carved into the earth. He clawed at the wet soil, but it was no use. The forest was stronger. Every tree seemed to breathe, their branches swaying like skeletal arms in the storm. "Noah, please!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "You're my brother." Noah stood above him, arms stretched wide, his body trembling like a puppet on strings. Rain dripped from his face, washing streaks of black across his pale skin. His eyes glowed faintly now, soft, greenish light pulsing like the veins of a leaf. "You don't understand," Noah whispered, his voice echoing like 100 whispers layered together. "They're giving us eternity. You'll never be alone again." Ethan shook his head violently. "No, this isn't you." Noah knelt beside him, smiling softly, almost tender. For a second, just a second, he looked like the Noah Ethan remembered. The scared kid who used to follow him everywhere. "Please, Ethan," he said, his voice trembling. "Don't make me go back there alone." His eyes glistened with something like tears. Ethan's heart cracked. He could almost believe it, almost believe his brother was still in there. But then he saw Noah's hands. Black claws where his fingernails used to be. And when Noah leaned closer, his teeth were sharp, jagged like splintered bone. Behind Noah, the roots rose higher, writhing in the air, hungry. The forest whispered louder now, chanting one word over and over. "Stay, stay, stay." Then a voice cut through the storm. "Ethan." He turned his head. Maggie stood at the edge of the clearing, soaked in rain, clutching a rusty axe in one hand and a burlap bag in the other. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with rage. "Kill it," she screamed. "Whatever that is, it's not your brother anymore." Ethan's breath came in sharp bursts. His heart pounded like a drum. Maggie tossed the axe toward him. It landed in the mud beside his hand. Ethan stared at the blade, then at Noah's face, twisted in a smile that didn't belong to him. And the forest whispered louder. The axe lay heavy in Ethan's trembling hand. Rain poured harder, drumming against the earth like war drums. Roots tightened around his legs, pulling, dragging him toward the glowing circle. The whispers grew deafening. "Stay, stay, stay." Noah knelt in front of him, smiling with those jagged teeth. His glowing eyes flickered like fireflies. "It's okay, Ethan," he said softly, almost tenderly. "It'll be easier if you don't fight." Ethan's breath came in gasps. He raised the axe, his arms shaking violently. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Noah tilted his head, his grin widening unnaturally. "Don't be. You'll thank me soon." Ethan swung. The axe sank deep, not into Noah, but into the root coiled around his leg. The ground shrieked. The roots convulsed, thrashing wildly. Ethan hacked again and again, mud and black sap spraying across his face. Finally, the roots snapped free. "Run!" Maggie screamed from the tree line. Ethan scrambled to his feet, grabbing the axe. But when he looked back, Noah wasn't kneeling anymore. He was standing tall. Too tall. his spine cracked, bones stretching, limbs bending wrong. His smile split wider, tearing the corners of his mouth. "You're making them angry," Noah hissed, his voice now a storm of whispers. The trees shuddered violently, roots bursting from the ground like serpents. Ethan ran, tearing through the mud toward Maggie. She grabbed his arm, yanking him into the dark. Behind them, the forest roared, branches thrashing, the whispers rising into screams. They didn't stop running until the trees thinned. The air grew quiet, and the storm faded to a drizzle. Ethan collapsed on the dirt road, gasping for breath. Maggie knelt beside him, her face grim. "You didn't kill it," she said softly. Ethan looked at her with wide, hollow eyes. "I couldn't," he whispered. Maggie glanced back toward the forest. It loomed silently under the gray sky, dripping with rain. For a moment, all seemed calm. Then Ethan saw it, 2 sets of footprints in the mud. His and Noah's. Leading out of the trees. Leading toward town. And from deep in the forest, the whispers began again. This time they were laughing.